Good afternoon, Allison Scalberg here at Consolidated Planning Group. We are so happy that you have joined us today for this valuable webinar. We are excited to be back here with Rachel Dickison. It's not Dickinson. I always like to say that because you have a little bit different spelling, Dickison, and she's with the Weeks Law Firm. She's no stranger to CPG. She has been presenting for us for several years now. And today we're going to be taking a deeper dive into the Special Needs Trust. The Special Needs Trust is almost a buzzword that we hear around in and around the community when we have a loved one with a disability. And quite honestly, it's because it's one of two places that we can have money that's not going to be counted against them for an asset test for Medicaid and other public benefits. And Rachel is going to go into a deeper dive on that. Sometimes these special needs trusts and these conversations start getting confusing because they start talking about the different types of special needs trust and what is what. So we're going to get into that a little bit further as well, and kind of identifying the different types and which one you might need. I always like to start by saying that we are in webinar mode today, and what webinar mode means is that we can't see you or hear you, but we do know you're there. And our chat box is open for questions today. And if you wrote questions in, Rachel has those questions in front of her. And we'll be getting to as many questions as time allows for today. We're going for an hour. We really try to start on time and end on time. All of our past recordings live on the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to for free. You'll know that you have the right YouTube channel when you see that little flower next to Consolidated Planning Group. When you look it up on YouTube, you'll see that flower, and you can subscribe to for free. That YouTube channel was kind of my little project. I was affiliated with the Texas Partners in Policy Making several years ago, and that was my pet project of creating something where families and parents could go to for valuable information for free to help streamline this complicated process of everything that we do for our loved one with a disability. So there's over 600 webinars on planning for special needs. If you can think of a topic, we've probably done it, and we've tried to label them in such a manner that you can kind of search for the steps that you're on in your planning journey and get lots of valuable information there. I am a parent to three adults with disabilities. So even though Consolidated Planning Group is a holistic special needs financial planning firm, and that's what we do all day, every day, is serve families who have a loved one with a disability and help them plan for their future, their own future, and their future of their loved one once they're gone. I eat, sleep, and breathe this both personally and professionally. So we are nationally certified as Social Security advisors, members of the Special Needs Planning Academy, chartered special needs consultants. We don't do what Rachel and the Weeks Law Firm does. We are not attorneys, and we don't play one on TV. We don't create special needs trust. We don't go to court for you on guardianship, like when you have a child turning 18 and they need to be under guardianship. There are different people that need to be at the table when it comes to planning for your loved one with a disability. And so I would argue a special needs financial planner and an estate planning attorney that is nuanced in special needs. There are a lot of financial advisors out there that don't have any experience with special needs. There are a lot of attorneys out there that don't have any experience with special needs. But what we consistently say and believe, whether you work with us, you work with them, or you work with somebody else, your situation is specialized, and it is truly important that you work with a specialist that understands the nuances, because having money in the right buckets to preserve eligibility for state and federally funded programs is really important. And when you're working with somebody that dabbles in this, or somebody that doesn't do this at all, you end up with money in the wrong buckets, you end up losing eligibility, you end up having lots of problems with those types of things. So when Rachel talks today, she's going to talk more about preventing those types of things from happening. And so having said that, Rachel, I'm going to turn everything over to you, and we are looking forward to hearing about the top 10 questions about special needs trust. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much. All right, so today we're going to be going over a general overview of this topic. There's a lot of different webinars, a lot of different topics that we're going to cover that you can look at more in depth. But let's start by talking about government benefits and what's available. Next slide, please. All right. So generally speaking, there is a lot of different government programs out there. The ones that tend to be that you're looking at for your child with special needs is going to be Supplemental Security Income, or SSI. That is $994 per month for food and shelter. You're also going to be looking at Medicaid and potentially at Medicaid waiver programs. Medicaid waiver programs provide additional services beyond traditional Medicaid. These can be things like attendant care, respite care, therapy, residential, or supplies for that individual. Next slide, please. So you're receiving all of this income. What are the actual eligibility requirements? In order to receive SSI and Medicaid, you have to have a disability determination from the Social Security Administration, and then you have to have low income and limited resources. Please note that for Medicaid waiver programs, the program requirements are all different. It depends on which particular program that you're applying for. Next slide, please.
Um, I just wanted to mention here that there is sometimes some confusion on this, Rachel, of like, my child is disabled. Why don't they qualify? And a lot of times that is just because they're minors, and I know you're going to talk more about that because we think of Social Security disability, and it only makes sense that if my child's disabled, then they would qualify for that. But there's all these little rules and little ifs and buts and parent income prior to the child turning age 18, income and assets. So it's if you have a child that is clearly disabled and you have applied for benefits in the past and they are under age 18, that is probably why they were denied, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be looking at reapplying once they do turn 18. So I just want to mention that because a lot of times people get denied and they really don't have a full understanding of why they are denied or if they're going to be denied forever. So I just wanted to mention.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, for government benefits, for SSI, you have to have less than $1,690 per month that is coming in for that child with disabilities. And for Medicaid, you have to have less than $2,000. The Social Security Administration defines this a little differently than what you may think of income as. So they're looking at shelter, cash, and then any asset that can be converted into shelter. Now, Allison mentioned your income might have disqualified them. That's something we call deeming. So a parent's income and the resources that they have is deemed to that child whenever they're under the age of 18. Once they're over the age of 18, they are considered to be their own household. So it's based on what they are receiving, what they have in their own name as resources. And in Texas, $1 of SSI eligibility does equal Medicaid eligibility. Next slide, please. Now, it's not just shelter and cash that can be considered income. There's also something called in-kind support and maintenance. This is whenever someone else is providing shelter to that individual with disabilities. Typically, this is a parent, your child lives with you in your home, and you're providing a roof over their head. Also, something to note, a lot of different resources out there say that it's whenever someone else provides food and shelter. This rule did change back in 2024, and now it is just whenever someone else provides shelter to that individual. If you are providing housing for your child with special needs, there is an automatic 1/3 reduction in the total amount of SSI. There's different strategies and ways that we can increase the Social Security, the SSI, but those are typically when they're paying rent, they're paying their share, or they're running through an ABLE account. We'll be talking about ABLE accounts later on in this presentation, but if that's something that applies to you, that's something that you should look into. If you're receiving about $600, a little bit more than that, but about $600 in SSI, you may need to do something to get the full amount of SSI.
And one thing I wanted to say, because like we could have a full webinar on every single topic that we're talking about right now, and we actually do. So there is a government benefits 101, and one thing that I think is important for people to understand is we throw around these little acronyms: SSI, SSDI, Social Security, CDB, DAC. There's all these different names, and some of them are the same, and some of them aren't. And it makes sense that a kid that's disabled would qualify for SSDI, but a lot of them never do because it's based off of, if they've worked and paid into the system. And so it starts being very confusing. I just want to say if you have felt confused by it, you're not crazy, you're not alone, and it is confusing. But we do take a deeper dive on the Government Benefits 101 on explaining some of that. We do have a couple of questions in the chat box. Is there any program for a child under age 18 where parents' income is not restricting his or her benefits? That's a loaded question as far as the SSA is concerned, because if a parent has died, then there are benefits for, if a parent has retired, then there might be benefits under age 18. And so there is that. And then, of course, there's the litany of other programs, and that is an entire other webinar, which I think we do later this week or next week on Medicaid waivers. Many of the Medicaid waivers is not based off of the parent's income and assets and qualifying for a Medicaid waiver. So the answer is yes, there are some programs out there. If you are in Texas, Texas has a very, very long waiting list to receive those Medicaid waivers unless you qualify for a crisis diversion. All states have Medicaid waivers. Some don't have any waiting list at all. But minors, depending on the waiver, there's a number of different waivers, but for the most part, it's based off of the child's income and assets, not the parents, even if they are under age 18. But so right now, we're really not talking about the Medicaid waivers. That's with Health and Human Services. And when we're talking about, SSI, Social Security, DAC, disabled adult child, Social Security disability, that is all through the Social Security Administration. It's a different entity, and they have different sets of rules. Do you have anything that you want to add to that, or any other programs that you can think of under age 18?
I think that was wonderful. I'm going to touch a little bit on Medicaid waivers and the basic information that you need to know, but we'll get that in a couple of slides. But I think what Allison said is all wonderful information.
Okay, and then one person says, if qualified for SSDI, are there additional eligibility for Medicaid waivers? And the answer is yes, and the answer is that it's convoluted and it depends on the waiver. And that's probably true for all states. It's definitely true in Texas. For a lot of the waivers, like the income that a person can have is 300% of SSI. So that amount is, I have it somewhere handy here, 20. I'll get back with you on that. No. 2982. 300% of SSI is 2982. So that's the amount of income that a person can have from, all sources and still qualify for a Medicaid waiver. So again, that's complicated. We do, and it's on our YouTube channel, the complete guide on waivers and kind of how that works and which one works with what. But yes, it's possible to be getting SSI or SSDI and be getting a Medicaid waiver. You could get both, but what you can't do is have more than one Medicaid waiver at the same time. Okay, so great question, and we're going to keep moving.
All right, so let's talk about resources. Resources are there's only countable resources and not countable resources. And you can go to the next slide, please. Countable resources are what is counted against that individual. What is not counted is a home, a car, their personal items, and a 529 education account. Everything else is counted against them, and they cannot have more than $2,000 in countable resources. This includes bank accounts, uniform transfer to minor accounts after age 21, investments, and real estate. Next slide, please. Okay, now if a parent passes away or they start taking their Social Security retirement, If the child was disabled prior to age 22, they may be eligible for the disabled adult child benefit. This is half of the parent's Social Security check that is paid to that individual. After 2 years of being on this program, they will also be eligible for Medicare, and they can be eligible for Medicaid and Medicare if they are meeting the qualifications for Medicaid of the less than $2,000. This is something that may apply to your situation if a parent's passed away or whenever that parent starts taking Social Security retirement.
So, Rachel, on this one of the things that is discussed in the special needs community, and it's kind of a little misnomer or confusing, is people say that when your kid was getting SSI and Medicaid, that you had to stay under the $2,000. And then they say, but when they move over to Social Security or Childhood Disability Benefits or DAC and they start getting Medicare, you don't have to stay under that $2,000. And it is true that you can get SSDI or DAC benefits and have more than $2,000 in your name. However, if you are getting a Medicaid waiver, you do have to stay Medicaid eligible. If you want to continue to get Medicaid, if you're getting caregiver services through Medicaid or other types of services that you want to continue, then you still have to meet those Medicaid guidelines, even when you switch over to the other benefit. I think there's been people that have been burned by that, and because they didn't really fully understand, but it is important. I think when you switch over, it's a decision of, do I want to be Medicaid eligible or do I not want to fool with that? Am I going to get a Medicaid waiver, or is it unlikely for the next 15 or 20 years? So who cares, and why be encumbered with the $2,000? So I think it's a choice, but I just wanted everybody to know that it's not as clean as once you switch over, you don't have to follow the guidelines anymore.
Right. All right, next slide, please. Okay, Medicaid waivers. So Allison talked a little bit about this. I strongly recommend you go over to the other webinar and hear more about all the different programs. The most important thing that you need to know is if you want your child to be on one of these Medicaid waivers, they have to be on the list to get eligible for those services. So I would recommend that you listen about those webinars and then see where your child is on the list. There's different ways that you can get on the list depending on what it is. Just an example of what those lists might be. If you've heard of CLASS or Texas Home Living, HCS or Home and Community-Based Services, that's the programs that we're talking about. Now, programs that are not needs-based, meaning they do not have the same requirements as SSI and Medicaid, are SSDI and Medicare. They have different requirements. It's based on the work history of that person or other factors. So this is not the programs that I'm talking about when I'm talking about eligibility. Next slide, please. Okay. Now this is something that Allison touched on just a minute ago. Government benefits are not enough to care for your child. A lot of families want to supplement what government benefits provide for. It is a decision of the parents on what programs you're trying to become eligible for, what they might need. I tend to be of the approach that we want to make sure your child is eligible for as many programs as possible, and we have the ability to get them on that program if we need to. And that's where a special needs trust comes in. Next slide, please. So a special needs trust is not a countable resource for government benefits purposes. Remember a couple slides ago, I talked about how a home, a car, a 529 education account, those are not countable resources. A special needs trust is also not a countable resource if it has the proper provisions and it's correctly distributed. It will not count against them. So you can have more than $2,000. There's actually not a limit on how much money can be in this trust, and it will not count against them. The purpose of this trust is to supplement the government benefits, not to replace them. So that's why a lot of the terms that might be in your trust are about using the government benefits first and then using the special needs trust funds. The distributions are also not considered to be income for that child with disabilities if you do them correctly. Next slide, please. Okay, now I just touched on this just a minute ago, but benefits are not the only reason for a special needs trust. So there's a lot of benefits to making sure that you're eligible for government benefits. You still have all the ability for those Medicaid waivers, healthcare insurance, whatever you need. However, some people don't need those specific programs. But it might be that you have a high functioning child. They just aren't really good with managing money. They may not need government benefits. They might be in the middle, but they need someone to have the be in control of those trust funds and manage them for them. The wonderful thing about a special needs trust is there's a lot of flexibility for different change circumstances. So if that individual is on government benefits, it allows them to qualify for government benefits. If it is not, if that child is not on government benefits, then there'll be flexibility. So it'll be a regular trust for health, education, maintenance, and support. And it will manage all the distributions, manage all the things about growing the assets, and the child would not have to do that for them. This gives us another extra protection of someone not taking advantage of your child because they don't have the access to those funds because your child is not directly in access of those funds. So even if you think, I don't really need government benefits, a special needs trust can still apply in your situation depending on what you need and what your child needs. Next slide, please. Okay, there is two types of special needs trusts. There are first-party special needs trusts and third-party special needs trusts. The difference between the two is who owns the money when it goes into the trust. A first-party special needs trust is created with the individual with disability's own money. This can be from a variety of different sources, but the most common is an inheritance that is given to that individual outright. So in the will, it says it goes to that individual. That's going to cause an issue for government benefits purposes. So you can redirect the funds that they go, instead of outright, they go to a first party trust. Child support is another one I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. And then also savings of their own money from working. All of those things can fund a first party trust. Because it's the individual with disability's own money, there is a Medicaid payback provision. So if they are ever on a Medicaid program, the state of Texas or whatever state they're receiving those funds from will keep a list of all the different charges, everything that they've spent on your child and their care. After that child passes away, then Medicaid will seek reimbursement from this trust for anything that they've used during that lifetime of that child, but it's only after that child passes away.
And I just wanted to mention that Texas is a Medicaid payback state. Not all states are a Medicaid payback state. And so one of the questions I have to say, I work with awesome, smart people, and they always come up with great questions like, so if I go and I get my special needs trust from a state, or if I, if I open, like, more of an example is if I open an ABLE account in a state that there is not a Medicaid payback, then do I avoid the Medicaid payback? And that's a clever question, and it's really good. And the answer is no. If you live in a state with a Medicaid payback, it doesn't matter where you get your stuff or whatever, you still have a Medicaid payback. The other thing that I will also say is there have been some suggestions, or kind of went to the, to kind of vote on getting rid of the Medicaid payback in Texas. And people say, I heard that they got rid of that. There's been lots of talk about that for lots of years. That has not passed. We're still hopeful and optimistic that they will get rid of that Medicaid payback provision and follow what some of the other states have done, but that has not happened yet, right? And do you have any updates on where that stands? I know our people only go to the legislative session every 2 years, which is a conundrum in itself, but whatever.
Yeah,
What's the
there's
update on that?
there's not one right now. We're still waiting. So the next legislative session or the next major one is going to be in 2027. So we may have some updates at that point. But as of right now, we don't know what it's going to look like.
Okay, cool, thanks.
All right, next. Okay, wonderful. So there's another type of special needs trust called a third-party special needs trust. This is probably what you've heard of when someone said, oh, you really need to get a special needs trust. So this is whenever it's created with someone else's own money for the benefit of that individual. Say that you want to create a trust and leave money to your child with disabilities. Because you're leaving it to the trust directly, it's not going to that individual first. There is no Medicaid payback provision. So it depends on how you do your planning, and if it's used with someone else's own money from parents, grandparents, siblings, a friend, then it would be They would not be a Medicaid payback. Next slide, please. Okay, now we've established special needs trust. We talked about the types. How does the money actually get into the special needs trust so it can be used? There's a variety of different things that you can use to fund the trust. There's a lot more than is listed here, but these are the most common. Most commonly, you will have your will for whatever percentage you have, your child is going to receive from your will, and it would go directly to the special needs trust. Remember, it wouldn't go to that individual outright. We don't want it to go to them directly. We want it to go to their trust. So your will could specifically name a special needs trust that the money is going to be paid to. Another very common one that we see is life insurance that's set up for that individual. So you have your beneficiary designation on the life insurance paid out to the special needs trust. You can also do this with retirement accounts, and there's additional tax benefits of leaving that retirement account to the special needs trust that I won't have a lot of time to get into today. But it's a good thing to look into. It can also be a gift. It doesn't have to be from you directly to your child. It could also be grandparents, siblings. Then we also have child support. So it's a special, unique circumstance that can also fund a special needs trust. Next slide, please.
I just want to say that your firm, I believe your firm is one of the best firms that I know, and I know a lot of firms that are in the special needs space that is very well versed in funding a special needs trust with a retirement account. And we're talking about IRAs, pensions, 401ks, 403bs, etc. It does matter. And working with a firm that has a good understanding of that is important. I would say a good majority, not everybody, but I would say a much higher percentage, 75, 80% of people's bulk of their wealth is in not in qualified funds, retirements, pensions, the things I just mentioned. And it does matter how we leave it. And I have heard Tressie speak at the UT planning conference. I know she's very well versed, and your firm is. And I appreciate that, because a lot of the law on some of that, I know when it first came out, it was clear as mud. It was very vague, the way that the law was written. And your firm has taken a deep dive in understanding. There's been some clarifications to the law over time. And if I have a stump the chump question on that side of the house, I always ask you guys. So thank you for that.
Definitely. Thank you. And yeah, that's something that's really important to us. One other note to mention on those type of accounts, specifically life insurance and retirement accounts, the most common error that we see is people will leave their will go to a special needs trust, but the beneficiary designations are never updated, where they go to the special needs trust, not to that individual outright, and then we have to fix it later on. So if you're looking at updating your estate plan, I strongly recommend you look at your beneficiary designations, because those do not go through your will. It's whatever the beneficiary designation says. So that's the most common thing that we see as an error. Okay, you're going to take essentially all of the different assets, all the different funding resources, and it's all going to go into the same special needs trust, and it's going to be established where the trustee is caring for it. Next slide, please. Okay, child support. So child support is a unique circumstance. After age 18, that child support will count against the child as income. So let me back up a second. In a divorce, special needs children, normally it would stop, a child support would stop at age 18. For a special needs child in Texas, lifetime child support can be ordered for that individual, because they're going to need care for their entire life. However, after age 18, it'll be considered that child's income. So there can be a complete loss of Social Security and, or excuse me, SSI and Medicaid, depending on the amount of the child support. Even if there's not a complete loss, there will be a reduction because of this child support. The way to fix this is to have the divorce decree order that the child support is paid into a first party special needs trust. Remember, it's the child's own income, so it has to be a first party trust. If this is a situation that you're going through, I strongly recommend that you talk to a family law attorney and to a special needs attorney about this situation, because most family law attorneys don't actually realize this might be an issue. So I'd recommend talking to both individuals.
And we have done webinars on special needs divorce and considerations on that. And there are specialized family law attorneys that are nuanced in special needs divorce, which I suggest you use, and we'll be happy to make a referral for that. But you hit the nail right on the head, Rachel, because when you're doing this, you actually need two. So if you don't have a first party special needs trust, it needs to be established, and somebody like the Weeks Law Firm would establish that for you, but they don't do family law. They're not going to court on divorce, right? So then you need the family law attorney to get the court order. And I just wanted to take it one step further, because some people think that if they work with a law firm and they get the first party special needs trust set up, all they need to do is go in with the Texas system and change the bank account, go open a first party special needs trust bank account and change it in the system. And it does not work like that. You do need a court order, and it's not a do it yourselfer type thing. But what it is a deal breaker on SSI, because if it's not set up properly, that SSI will be counted against them for income purposes, and they either will be reduced or completely denied for SSI. So it is important to get this right. If you're going through a divorce, we're sorry, but trying to get it right on the front end is a lot cheaper than trying to fix it on the back end. If you're in a situation you didn't know what you know now, and you do need to fix it on the back end, it's not the end of the world, but we do suggest getting that done prior to applying for SSI. Okay, you'll save yourself a lot of headache to get it done prior to them turning 18 if you can, and definitely prior to trying to apply for SSI.
Yep. All right. Next slide, please. Okay, what can the trust funds be used for? So we've created the trust, we've funded the trust. What can you actually use the trust funds for? The distributions from the trust cannot be cash or debit cards. Remember, in the beginning, I talked about income cannot be cash. Social Security considers the debit cards to essentially be cash, so you cannot use that for trust funds. It also cannot be anything else that is paid for by government benefits. So how do you actually pay? Next slide, please. Most people, what they do, or let's talk about the distributions first, and then we'll talk about how we actually pay them. So it can be for personal items, social and recreational activities, entertainment, education, medical expenses that are not covered by Medicaid or private healthcare insurance. It can be truly any expense that you have other than the things that government benefits provide for. So this is something, if you're unsure of what the expense should be, I recommend that you talk to a special needs trust attorney. It can be a lot of different things if government benefits don't provide for it. Next slide, please. Okay, you cannot use cash or a debit card, so how can you use the funds from the trust? A trustee can pay the expenses directly to the third party from the trust. They can have a credit card that the trustee pays off each month that is dedicated only for that trust. Or you could have something called a TrueLink credit card. Essentially, this is a prepaid credit card, and you can allot a particular allowance for that individual with disabilities, put it on the TrueLink credit card, and then they can spend their money how they wish. This is a great option for promoting independence for that special needs beneficiary. Next slide, please. Okay, who is going to be your trustee? So they're the person that's actually managing out all the distributions. Their big duties that they have is to invest the assets properly, to understand how distributions impact government benefits, distribute for the child's care. And I will mention that's not just a once a month thing, that can be a lot more frequent than that. They keep detailed financial records that will be requested by Social Security, so they need to make sure that everything's detailed and kept in line, and they may have to file a tax return. Next slide, please. Now, that's a lot of different things that you may not have ever had to do. What do you look like, or what do you look for naming that trustee? We generally recommend that it's someone that's reliable, they're very trustworthy, and they have the ability to learn the special needs trust rules. We want to make sure that they're going to be doing everything correctly so it doesn't impact government benefits. A lot of times it is a family member or a friend of that individual, even a sibling potentially. If you do not have that person in your life that you trust to do this, there is professional assistance options. There are corporate trustees that their whole job is managing these types of trusts. There is also something called the ARC Master Pool Trust that could be a good option for you and your family. I will mention with these corporate options, there is a fee they charge to handle these funds. So this is just something that you're going to talk to your special needs attorney about if a family member would be a good solution for you or if we need to find a different one. Next slide, please. Okay, a very common question that I get is what happens if I don't set up a special needs trust? The most common scenarios that I hear if they're not setting up a special needs trust are the following. So one is they're not going to leave an inheritance at all. They're just going to leave it to their other siblings. If you do this, you are guaranteeing that they will not have anything but government benefits. They will only have what is left for that government benefit, and that is not enough to care for them and for them to have a well-being, wonderful life. Another option is to inherit outright. If this happens, one of two things will happen. Either they will have to spend down all of their assets in their care. Often it'll use up all the funds for them in a couple of years, and then they'll be back down to the basic government benefits program, just like the no inheritance, or they will have to have it go to a first party trust. If it goes to a first party trust, it will never go to the other family members, the other individuals. It will only go back to pay for them during their life, and then it would go back to pay Medicaid. And then if there's anything left over, it would go to other family members, which is most time people don't want that. The other option that I see is leaving assets to other family members. I strongly recommend against this. Even if you think that the sibling is the best person, they're going to do everything right, you cannot guarantee it, especially if it's in their name. It's much better to have an account or a trust that's just in that child's name, and we can guarantee that it's going to be used for them. We also don't know if something's going to happen to that sibling where they're incapacitated themselves, they pass away, and they leave it to other family members of their own instead of their special needs sibling. So just be really careful, and I would not recommend that.
And also divorce. I mean, all things happen, like with that other sibling. So even though the sibling is honest and good, and you have no question at all that they would take care of their brother, people die, people get sick, people get divorced, stuff happens. People have their own special needs kid and have other needs. Like there's so many things that happen. So I agree 1,000%. Don't do this. Whatever you do, don't do that.
Okay, now what else do you need besides a special needs trust? I mentioned wills earlier. If you don't have your will set up, the state of Texas will decide what your will looks like, or whatever state you live in. They will not designate it outright. They will designate it outright, not to the special needs trust, and we might have to go through a different situation. You don't want to do that. You want to set up your will. Make sure you also designate a guardian. So this is not just for your child with disabilities if they might need to be under guardianship. This is also for you. If you're incapacitated, we need to have a plan on who's going to be caring for you and caring for your child with disabilities. I already mentioned beneficiary designations. Please check what they are. I would also coordinate with other family members. You never know if a sibling is going to leave some money to their special needs sibling. If they do that and they leave it outright, we're going to be in a situation where they're inheriting outright and have to spend down, or it's a first party trust. We don't want to do that. Have them have it go to a third party trust. You also want to prepare for your own incapacity by creating powers of attorney. So who's going to make your financial decisions? Who's going to make your medical decisions? Really, a special needs trust is great. It's setting it up, but we have to make sure all the funds actually get to that trust and you have all these things set up for potential situations that may happen. Next slide, please. Okay, ABLE accounts. So ABLE accounts can hold up to $100,000 without impacting government benefits. There's about $19,000 per year. This amount changes per year of how much you can put into that account. So this year is $19,000. You have to be disabled or used for disability services for this type of account. One of the major issues with it is there is a Medicaid payback provision. So causes it not to be a accountable resource. However, there is Medicaid payback. The rule on this just changed on who can be the beneficiary or the owner of this account. You have to be disabled or blind before age 46. Before January of this year, it was 26. Next slide, please. So an ABLE account, you can put $19,000 per year into this account. It's based on the annual gift tax exclusion amount, and it's only that amount for any person that's leaving money to this ABLE account. Only $100,000 is exempt for SSI purposes. Over $100,000, it is going to suspend SSI, but you can keep Medicaid. And then the total maximum amount is $500,000 if it's just Medicaid only. Next slide, please. Now, what is an allowable expense is education, housing and transportation, living expenses, health and wellness, assistive technology, personal support, legal fees. It's really very broad on what the funds can be used for. Next slide, please. Okay, ABLE accounts and SSI. An ABLE account, the interest is not income to the beneficiary, so it's not going to have an issue with income for SSI purposes. It also will not have an issue with the resources that it is because it's not a countable resource. Now, with this, there is some issues with this type of account.
Is this on the right slide? I apologize.
It's back, I think, 2.
Okay.
It's going forward still.
Is this the right one?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, thank you.
So the Medicaid drawback, or the major drawbacks of this is the Medicaid payback provision. So just like a first-party trust, the funds in this account are considered the individual with disability's own money. So there is Medicaid payback after the creation of the account. So it's a little bit different than a first-party special needs trust. However, there is Medicaid payback. With a third-party special needs trust, there is no Medicaid payback. Something that is a benefit of this account is that your 529 education account, say that you created one for that child and they are no longer going to be able to use it, you can roll over a 529 account into an ABLE account if they're the same beneficiary. Next slide, please. Okay, when do I recommend you use this? If the individual is working and they're saving their own earnings in a place that it would be more than $2,000 for them, excellent use of the account. This allows them to have a savings account where they might not have ever been able to have that with government benefits. If they're receiving a small gift or inheritances that's less than $19,000, you can put it in this account and save it so it can be used over a longer period of time instead of having to spend it in that month to be eligible for government benefits. You can also do that 529 rollover. Again, it has to be the same beneficiary. The other thing that is unique with ABLE accounts and why we like ABLE accounts and will use them with a trust is that you can pay rent from an ABLE account. So one of the limitations of a third party or a first party special needs trust is if you are qualified for government benefits, you cannot use it for shelter without taking the 1/3 reduction. You can use the ABLE account to pay rent. So you could use a special needs trust and an ABLE account to be able to pay for rent for that individual with special needs.
There's 2 things that I wanted to mention because there's a couple of misnomers on kind of this topic. One is if I have an ABLE account and my loved one with a disability is working, I can have their income direct deposited to the ABLE account and it will not count against them for income purposes for SSI. And that is not true. It is true that the asset, as far as like the $2,000 limit that they're talking about for Medicaid, will not be counted against them, but there's no such thing as hiding income from the Social Security Administration for SSI purposes, even with the ABLE account. So I always like to make that clear. And then you hit the nail right on the head. let's say we have a kid that has a 529C that was established prior to disability or early on when we thought they were going to go to college. And maybe now we're thinking that they're not going to go to college, or we know they're not going to college, or maybe they're done with college and there's still money in that 529C. Um, it is eligible to roll over to an ABLE account, but it is subject to the ABLE limits annually. So like right now, the ABLE is $20,000 a year that you can put into that ABLE account, and an additional 15,650 if the individual is working up to their earnings amount, up to that amount. So my point is if you have a 529C for college and there's $100,000 in there, you can't just roll over the $100,000 immediately into an ABLE account. You would be doing it in steps over each year and doing the limit each year, which is subject to the gift tax exclusion. So we can go deeper and wide with you on that. You can have, I saw a question, you can have an ABLE account and you can have a 529C. A 529C or the 529A for ABLE, neither one are going to count against that person for SSI or Medicaid purposes, but that 529C, when we make a distribution, it needs to go directly to the school, not to the person. Okay, so I just wanted to mention those because those are some things that have come up through the years on that.
Right. Thank you so much. So then with the ABLE account, and it's a really good tool. It's something that we've been using a lot. It doesn't replace the special needs trust in most circumstances. A lot of times we're using this as an additional thing that we're doing, but it's not something that is going to completely replace the special needs trust. The big reason for that is because of the Medicaid payback provision. And also, there's a lot of limitations on this. So we want to make sure that you are able to leave as much money as you want to that child with disabilities. Next slide, please. Okay, the most common question I get is, when do I need to create the special needs trust? You really need to create the special needs trust before you become disabled or before you pass away. I wish I knew when that was going to be so I could tell you we need to plan it at this exact time. A lot of different life circumstances happen. We don't know when this is going to happen. So what I recommend is whenever you're ready to start having these conversations and you know who it's going to be and what you want it to look like, that's when to talk to an attorney about it. There's a lot of different things. This is a difficult conversation to have and to think about, you passing away. So if you've thought about it, if you're ready to make those decisions, that's the perfect time to talk to an attorney. If you're not quite ready for that, we won't be able to effectively plan for you. So I strongly recommend that once you're ready to have those conversations, let's get it done. The other thing is, it is not related to guardianship. So guardianship is a legal process that if an individual is unable to make medical or financial decisions, they may need to go to court to have the parents appointed as guardians around age 18. I have a lot of families that do special needs trusts and guardianships both at age 18. Special needs trusts are not related to guardianship whatsoever. You can do it a lot before, you can do it after, whatever is best for your family. Like I said, a lot of my families, I will do their guardianship and then we'll talk about special needs planning afterwards. Next slide, please. Okay. So what is the result of wise planning? How do we make sure that you are feeling comfortable with everything that we're doing? We want to make sure that we have a financial plan in place to care for your child's care long term. So that's looking at not just a special needs trust, but how are we going to fund whatever they need for their lifetime? You want to make sure that you have a support team in place of the individuals that are going to be caring for their financial well-being, like the trustee, and for their guardian who's going to be managing their personal care needs. You can also, as part of this process, create instructions for their care of things that you know as a parent that you really want to make sure goes to the trustee and the other people that are caring for them, and make sure they have the best life possible. We want to make sure that you're retaining eligibility for government benefits, whatever those are going to look like. And we don't know what the government benefits are going to look like in the future. 10 years from now, it could be completely different in a good way. We could have a lot more programs, a lot more availability on the wait list, where we really need you to have this ability to be able to be a Medicaid eligible. Ultimately, what all of this is about is we want to make sure that there is a really fulfilling life for that individual with special needs. We also want to make sure that you are not as worried as parents. There's no way that we can't fully stop a parent from being worried about what's going to be in the future. But if we have a plan in place, it's going to give you a lot of peace of mind. And that's ultimately why we do everything the way that we do. We want to make sure that you are feeling comfortable with all of this. All right. Thank you so much. I think it's time for questions.
Yes, we have lots of questions, and people
Okay.
that have attended our webinars in the past are probably wondering why we weren't answering the questions. I wanted to get through the top 10 things and then go to the questions. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to do speed questions and speed answers. Okay.
Okay.
So this is the lightning round on the questions and answers. And so what I would say is if you have deeper questions that we didn't get to, or you'd like to go deeper with an answer on that, then reach out to our team or to Rachel, schedule a consultation, and go over that. And so in the last of our slides, we have webinars on everything of these topics of things to keep on your radar. You're going to find those on the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel, ABLE accounts, whole presentation on ABLE accounts, guardianship, waivers, SSI, how and when to apply, you name it, we've done it, it's out there. So do check that out if you haven't seen it. This link here, everybody's going to get a copy of today's slides and a link to the recording so you can go back and kind of peruse the slides, any links that are in there. But this will be our upcoming webinars, and I do know that we do have government benefits coming up, and I do know that we have waivers coming up. So check that out. And this is where you will schedule a free personalized consultation with our team to have a better understanding of kind of where you are and where you've been. So here we go, lightning round on questions. We got about 9 minutes left for today. Can my 17-year-old receive SSI benefits? And I would say yes. However, it's based off of the parent's income and assets prior to them turning age 18. So if you're a parent and you don't have any income, then it's probably likely that the kid could qualify. But you still have to look at those asset limits, and they're looking at one house, one car, and $2,000 or $3,000, depending if you're married. So for the most of the families that we work with, their kids are not getting SSI prior to turning age 18, and then everything changes after that. Someone says contact information for attorneys closer to Conroe or Huntsville. We have recommendations for attorneys all over the state. So reach out to us for that. How do I get an ABLE account, and what is this for? How do I invest the money for his future? So I would suggest in that one, listen to the ABLE account presentation. We help people set up ABLE accounts all the time, and we also go over how and when to get money out of them, and what to do and basically what not to do, so not to mess up the public benefits. And I just wanted to echo something that you said, Rachel, about the special needs trust and the ABLE account. Because one of the questions we always get is, should I have an ABLE account or should I have a special needs trust? And my answer is always both. You should have both because they work beautifully together, like you were talking about. Like the ABLE account can pay for housing without that 1/3 reduction. An ABLE account has a limited amount of money that can go in each year and a limited amount of money that can be in it overall before you disqualify for benefits. Whereas a special needs trust can have an unlimited amount of money in it, and truly unlimited. So I think that that's important. Okay, let's see. My son just started his first job. What are the recommendations as to what type of account should his income be deposited into? And that was where I was saying is, I mean, if you have an ABLE account that it can go direct deposit it into the ABLE account, then that might be nice. But it could go into their regular bank account. You just don't want it to amass over $2,000. But even if it goes into the ABLE account, that income is still going to be counted for SSI purposes. Okay, one person says need info and guidance on wills and trusts, and I think we've talked a lot about today. The bottom line is you should have a will, you should have a trust. If you have a special needs kid, you should work with an attorney who is nuanced regarding special needs. That is our recommendation. Whether you work with them or somebody else, work with somebody that understands. What I would also say is that a lot of people either have no will or it hasn't been updated in the last 15 or 20 years. And my opinion, and you can echo whatever you think, Rachel, is that I think that your legal documents should be looked at every 3 to 5 years. It doesn't mean that you're changing it every 3 to 5 years. However, laws change, things change, and getting a professional to look at it and eyeball it and make sure that it's still what you intended. What you did 5 years ago might be funny 5 years later. Like, people die, people get older. We have better understanding of people that we thought might be the players in the situation, and now we don't think they're a player at all. There's all kinds of things like that. So do you agree with 3 to 5 years, or what are your thoughts?
Definitely, I would recommend 3 to 5 years. I also saw a question that was how often do government law changes happen with the benefits? It tends to be maybe every 10 years, but there's a lot of different things that change year over year. So we don't know when a new change is going to happen, and we won't necessarily be reaching out to you with changes on that. You may not know unless you talk to an attorney. So 3 to 5 years is a good checkpoint, even if you're not changing anything else.
Agreed. Okay, that covers that question. What is the value of using life insurance to fund a trust? So I'm a fan. I am a huge fan of using life insurance to fund the special needs trust because that keeps our assets nimble for the 25 to 35 years that we might be spending in retirement. And you're the funder of everything. You're the one that's paying for everything. So that keeps your assets available to you and your spouse or your family to do what you've always done. And then we know for sure that upon your death, that life insurance will fund the special needs trust along with whatever was left over after your retirement. There are people that are super affluent and they don't need life insurance to fund the special needs trust, but those people still usually need life insurance because they have tax problems, and life insurance passes tax free to heirs. So I think people are hip to slimy life insurance people and they don't like that, and I think that that's true. But I think before you have like your guard up of that life insurance is wrong and I don't need this, life insurance is a beautiful tool to help fund the special needs trust. And so the key is finding out how much you need to fund that trust. When do I need to have a bank account for the trust? Why don't you answer that, Rachel?
So it's only when the trust is funded. Generally, I recommend that you don't fund your trust until after you pass away to make sure you have full ability and access to the funds for whatever your care might be.
Correct. And then typically if it's a first party special needs trust, then there would be a checking account for that. That would be a little different story than the third party special needs trust. Where do I get and afford an attorney to help with the special needs trust and POAs and things like that? And what I would say is most services and the attorneys that we refer to are paid for services. If you are a low income family or low asset family, there's Disability Rights Texas. You can go to our friend Google and type in legal aid and put your county in, and the legal aid organizations in your county will pop up and you can reach out to them for the services that they may be able to provide. Sometimes there's other agencies in your county that have a grant that help with stuff like that. There is a such thing like Galveston County had free guardianship if you lived in Galveston County. There's a few counties in the state that are like that, and I do mean a few, not very many. But so that would be what I would do for if you needed help with legal services financially. Would it be beneficial to have my special needs son to be deeded our property and land before his dad and I pass on? And I feel like that's a whole other question, Rachel, is to have it to the special needs trust or to the person outright. And I think that depends if the person is a vulnerable person and could be easily hoodooed or, taken advantage of, then I think that there should be more protections in place for that individual. Do you agree with that?
I agree. And then also, I would strongly recommend talking to an attorney or an accountant about the tax implications of transferring property during life versus during death, because a lot of times it doesn't make sense to transfer it during life. Makes more sense to transfer it after death.
Okay, so one person says, and I'm just going to be running through these. We might go a minute or two over. Can I open a main trust and a secondary trust for my grandchild with special needs? They can have an individual with a special needs can only have one ABLE account, but there could be multiple special needs trusts. Grandma and grandpa could have one. It could be a divorce situation. A mom has her own that she wants to control, and dad has his own that he wants to control. So that is an option. But what I would say is less complicated is better later down the road when people are administering this when you're dead. Less complicated is better if there is a such thing as an agreement or a good divorce or things like that. Is there any program for a child under 18 where parents' income is not restricted by his or her benefits? And yes, the Medicaid waivers are based off of the kid's income and assets. In Texas, we have a very long waiting list. Other states do not, but there are programs available for that. And there's also programs through the Workforce Commission, VR, vocational rehab, helping a person with a disability get to work. Those are all programs that are available, and those programs are available in all states, not just in Texas. If qualified for SSDI, are there any additional eligibility for Medicaid waivers? So again, if you're getting SSDI, that does not mean that you can't qualify for a Medicaid waiver. There are 109 Medicaid programs in Texas. There's a bunch of Medicaid waivers. Again, we talk more about that, and the different programs have different rules, and understanding those rules is important. For DAC, Disabled Adult Child, it was called that for 40 years. They changed the name to Childhood Disability Benefits a few years ago. Do they continue to get benefit services in Texas? And the answer is yes. One question that comes up, and I don't know if this was clearly communicated on the question, but if my child is getting childhood disability benefits under a parent's record, and then I die and their benefits that are at 50% move to 75%, and their income is increased as a result of that death, are they going to lose their Medicaid waiver because that income is too high? And in that example, they would not. But in that example, if they are also working, they may need to stop working to not lose the benefits. But if they are only going to lose benefits because of the increase to the childhood disability benefits because of the death of a parent, they're not going to lose their Medicaid waiver for that reason. If my daughter gets part of my Social Security since I'm retired plus her own Social Security, is her SS reduced by my share? So the answer is they never end up getting double, but they get up to the full amount. So it's not like she would get half of yours and then go ahead and get hers too. So basically they would say, what is the total amount? And then they would reduce that. So it would be the total amount, but they would reduce what she would be eligible. They'd take her benefit first and then reduce what's coming from yours. But your benefit is not being reduced. It's a mouthful, but we'll talk more about that on the government benefits. Can an inheritance go to a third-party special needs trust? And that is exactly where we want it to go. So it does not have a Medicaid payback on that. So that is smart. And so the key takeaway that Rachel talked about was do not name your special needs loved one as directly as a beneficiary on anything that you have. Instead, the right way to do it is the third-party special needs trust for the benefit of said person. Okay, we talked about when the trust should be created. Is there a limit on how much money in a third-party trust? We talked about that. There's no limit on how much money could go in annually or how much money could be in a third-party trust. There's also no limit of who could contribute to a third-party special needs trust. For instance, if you had a third-party special needs trust and I wanted to make a contribution to your kid, I could contribute that to the third-party special needs trust. You can have a first-party and third-party special needs trust. Sometimes you need both. Sometimes people don't need both. It depends on that situation. Would you agree with that, Rachel?
Yes.
Okay. We hope you don't need a first-party special needs trust is what we hope.
Agreed.
Can a disabled child under age 18 get on the waiting list in Texas on a Medicaid waiver program, even though they are not yet eligible for Medicaid due to parents' income? And the answer is yes. They can and they absolutely should get on the waiting list because the waiting list is so long. Because the eligibility for those Medicaid waivers is when they come up on the list, not when they go on the list. So that Medicaid eligibility they're looking for when they come up on the list, and a lot of times they're going to qualify for Medicaid just because they came up on that list. So definitely get them on the list for that. Can an SSI payment go to a third party special needs trust directly? And I've seen that as a conundrum. No, I've seen people accidentally set up their SSI to go to the trust directly, and that shouldn't be happening. It should be either a rep payee account or account in the individual with a disability's name where the SSI goes. But could you take some of the SSI and put that into an ABLE account or a first party special needs trust? The answer is yes. But you couldn't, because that money is directly for that individual and their benefit, you could not put that money into a third party special needs trust. Do you agree with that, Rachel?
Yes, it has to do with who is the money for. If the SSI is the individual's own money, a third party trust is for someone else's own money. So you can't intermingle the funds, but it can go into a first party or an eighth.
Okay, what are the items needed when we are ready to have a conversation about the special needs trust? Do you have a checklist? And you probably go over that in your initial consultation of kind of how the process works and what they're going to need. Is that right?
Yes, and most attorneys will have a questionnaire that they're going to ask you to fill out with different people and different roles. You don't have to have everything figured out by the first meeting, but that'll give you an idea of what conversations to have.
Do you think that there is a such thing as too much money in a special needs trust?
I would say no. I would strongly prefer that most of the money is in a third party, not a first party trust because of Medicaid payback.
Okay. And then let's see. There is something special. Someone said, is there anything special when the 401k is used to fund a special needs trust? And I know that Tressie has talked about that with us before. We'll go deeper on that next time. We are out of time for today. So if we did not, we tried really hard to get to all your questions today. We went a little bit over. Again, that's not what we do. We did that yesterday and we did it today, but that's not what we do. But we wanted to answer as many questions as possible. Reach out to the Weeks Law Firm, get on Rachel's schedule for an initial. Reach out to CPG, get on our schedule for initial, and we'll take that further. If you had additional questions that we didn't get to or we didn't get deep enough, reach out to us directly. Check your email, check your spam. When you sign up for a webinar with Consolidated Planning Group, and ask if you wanted to be contacted. And if you say no, you do not get an email with us with a copy of the slides or a link to the recording because we're respecting your wishes not to contact you. If you say yes, you're going to get an email with the slides and a link to the recording. And I always just like to say that sometimes that goes to spam. So check that out. And those emails usually either come out a few hours after the webinar or by the next morning at the latest. So if you are missing an email with that, just reach out to us and we will definitely get it to you. Thanks everyone for being here with us today. As usual, Rachel is awesome and full of wonderful information. So we certainly appreciate that. And Rachel, we will look forward to partnering with you and the Weeks Law Firm again soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye now.